Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank all of our energy producers for making all of our lives better. I just want to correct one thing that has been said repeatedly in this room today, and that's talking about renewables. They aren't renewables, they're unreliables. And it's part of the reason that we have skyrocketing energy costs in this country. President Biden has been at war with the oil and gas industry since day one of his presidency. According to the Institute of Energy Research, this administration has taken 125 actions by November of last year against oil, gas, and coal. That number went up to about 150 by April of this year and reached 175 just last month. All of this is being done to appease a radical environmental base and is resulting in increased fuel cost, decreased access to reliable energy sources, and more energy poverty in America. Inflation has skyrocketed since Biden took office as a direct result of his failed energy policies. According to a spokesman for the Petroleum Association of Wyoming, the active rig count in the state now sits at 25, a decrease from 30 active rigs just a few years ago. Many pending leases have been stagnant in the state with no promise of protection from serial litigation. New leases are practically non-existent, and existing frameworks such as the multiple use framework outlined under FLPMA are being abused to the creation of new uses that interfere with activities that actually generate revenue. On top of this, we're seeing the federal government seek to eliminate accessibility of small businesses to the surety market through this fluid mineral leasing rule, making it harder for small oil and gas companies to operate on federal lands. Mr. Kropatch, oil and gas development in Wyoming contributes a significant portion of state and county revenue to pay for critical government programs and other essential services like fire protection, medical services, landfills, airports, roads, courthouses, law enforcement, etc. Can you briefly touch on the long-term impacts this proposed rule will have on oil and gas development and the state's ability to generate revenue to provide these services?
Yes, thank you. As you mentioned, the state does receive significant revenue and taxes from the oil and gas industry and the production in Wyoming, both on federal land and private lands, used for public education and other infrastructure and other services. And so as these companies are forced out of business, not only will the state and the local governments lose that revenue, they're going to lose the jobs that are supported by those companies. And so the local communities are going to lose citizens, they're going to lose the supporting jobs that go along with the oil and gas companies and the work they do, and so lose revenue in addition to lose revenue through those jobs in addition to the revenue they're losing from the taxes on the oil and gas production.
It has a cascading ricochet effect through our entire economy when you adopt energy policy as the Biden administration has done since he was elected to office. Is that fair to say?
That's correct.
Okay. The U.S. Department of Interior's Natural Resources Revenue data reports that federal lands in the state of Wyoming produced $1,656,396,384 in the year 2022. $785 million of that went to the state of Wyoming and primarily came from oil and gas production. This was an increase in proceeds from previous years, but not because of increased production. The increase in proceeds came about because of increased oil and gas prices. In other words, intentional energy poverty imposed by this administration. Production consistently fell between 2019 and 2022 and continues to fall, although I'm sure that every one of you used some form of oil and gas to arrive here today. Mr. Kropatch, again, has the Biden administration policies contributed to the increase of oil and gas prices?
Yes, it has. Reducing and forcing production off of federal lands, for example, as they admit to do in this rule, decreases the supply that's available and therefore increases the price. And also without any of the environmental benefit, because we're doing it better than anyone else in Wyoming. And so when you force it out of Wyoming, then we're increasing the price and decreasing the environmental benefit.
Thank you for that. And my last questions, we have heard from the administration and those on the other side of the aisle many times that regulations like this and land withdrawals will only impact federal lands and minerals. Can you explain why that is not the case, why there will also be an impact on private lands?
Sure, and I touched on it in a previous answer, but in Wyoming, the way the land ownership pattern works, paired with horizontal drilling, almost eliminates the ability to drill a private or state well without encountering federal minerals. And so then when you can't get a permit or a lease to drill those federal minerals, you also cannot drill the private or state lands that are in that general area.
Well, I appreciate the work you do. Again, I appreciate the people who work to make our lives better rather than to make them more expensive. Thank you all for being here today. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Representative Hageman. I will now